Hi, everyone. Ariana Friedlander here with Rosabella Consulting. Welcome to the Co-Creators in Conversation interview series, where we celebrate inspiring leaders who are disrupting their industries and creating economic value by caring about their people. Right now, we are excited to be chatting with Vansia, Senior Vice President, Chief Brand and Innovation Officer at ConnectOne Bank. Sia, it's so great to have you here today. Thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me, Ariana. I'm excited.
Please, will you take a minute to introduce yourself to our audience? Tell us a bit about your background, what your role is, and maybe a brief story of how you got there.
Yeah, sure. So, as you mentioned, I'm the Chief Brand and Innovation Officer for ConnectOne Bank. We're a regional bank that's based in the New York, New Jersey metro market. And so, in the words of my parents, they're like, brand and innovation, what do you do? And do you have health insurance? But I actually took on the brand and innovation role back in December. And so we are a growing company. We are a growing bank. And so I'll start by telling you about my background, because I know that was the first question. So I joined this company out of college almost nearly 11 years ago. And I started as an administrative assistant. I had no intention of going into banking. I didn't graduate from college and say I want to work at a bank. I still don't think many people say that. But I had started a business with my college roommate at the time, and that was the focus. And so I thought I'd take a job at a bank because it's safe and it looks good on your resume. And there was an admin position. I didn't realize the magnitude of the job. It was the admin to the CEO, and it was a small company. You know, it was a 40-person. We had 40 employees, 40 team members at the time, and I didn't think much of it. It was resume filler. It was an easy office gig, and so I worked on that. I worked on the startup business that eventually sort of died out, but at the same time, and so my job at the bank slowly evolved into a career. And just like any other high growth company, the more that you grow, the more there is to do. And so in addition to my day-to-day work, I take on event planning and running the social media and putting together campaigns. And so as the company grew, obviously one person can't do all of these things. And so I split off my role and I launched the marketing department at the company. And I did that for a while. I was a one-person marketing department and then eventually hired a team and grew that team. And I have an awesome team today. And so company continued to grow, and I took on the role of Chief Brand Officer and then added innovation to the title, as I mentioned, back in December. And so today, I think my function is promoting the brand of ConnectOne, continuing to build the brand. I know in our last conversation, we talked about the difference in marketing versus brand building. And because we compete in one of the most densely populated, hyper competitive markets in the financial space, right? The New York, New Jersey market. We can't outspend Bank of America. We can't outspend TD. And so for us, the power of brand building has really allowed our company to grow. And so that's part of my role. And since then, we have taken on a subsidiary, which we support. We are working to build another sub-brand. And then there's innovation. And as you know, banking is a very, very old industry. And so I'm still navigating that space and working to define that role. But I think the possibilities for any financial institution that wants to evolve are nearly limitless. There's so much access to technology. There's access to financial technologies. There's access to partners. And so, like many other businesses, there's a lot of adapting and shifting and growing that has and will continue to occur. And so I'm happy to be a part of it.
Wow. I so appreciate hearing your story. And I think that it's so valuable for so many other professionals to hear about the mindset you were in when you started and the way that this opportunity turned into some stepping stones for you to actually have a flourishing career. I think that so often when we finish school, we think, oh, I'm going to have it all figured out. And the reality is always so much different from our expectations. So it's cool to hear how you stepped into this with an open mind, but not thinking that it was going to be where you would be 11 years later. And here you are. There's so much you shared that I would love to explore more about. Particularly you started in this position. I understand that it's not like somebody else had done this work before you. You created a lot of the jobs that you've held there. What's that been like for you to step into a role that no one else has ever done and maybe did or did not come with a really specific job description?
It's been a challenge, and I think early on, the first few times it was especially a challenge. And it's not to say that marketing hadn't been done before, but we didn't have that function within our company, and we had a very unique marketing model. We didn't advertise a whole lot, right? This brand built. The word brand is a more modern word, but early on it wasn't so well known. I think the startup industry really brought some light to it, and so we were sort of doing that without knowing that's what it was. So I think that added another layer of elements. You couldn't look to other traditional methods. So I think it was a little bit of trial and error. I think it's I don't know how else to say this, but learning from other people around you. And, I've had great mentors within my own company. I've gotten to meet people who we partnered with, whether they were vendors or even people who sort of did what I did, right? Worked in marketing at a bank. We may have had different models, but everyone that you meet has something that they can teach you, and they have a unique experience. And so I think just sort of being a sponge and taking in as much as you can from your own company, from the areas that you may not think apply to you, and then and anyone around you. I will say I did struggle with it early on because we grow up in a, I know we're both Seth Godin fans, and so he does blog a lot about our modern education system. And so we grow up in this world of structure, and things are, your entire path isn't laid out, but you sort of know what happens in each phase. And then when you're thrown out there and you're in a world of gray area, it's hard to navigate. And so I think it was personally challenging to do, and sometimes it still is, but I think what I've learned from that is really understanding when your role is undefined, and by the way, that's almost the negative way to say it. I've had the opportunity to define my role, right? And I didn't see, it took me a while to shift that perspective. I think it's really incumbent on you to self-reflect, and not just once or twice, it's a consistent process to understand your strengths and your team's strengths, and then understand where you can provide your company the most value. It's easy to want to, and I love I have new shiny object syndrome, I'll admit it, but it's easy to want to chase what the trends are, what's being blogged about, or what competitors are doing. And it's of course important to pay attention to those things, but I think when shaping what you do, it's really about the impact and the value that you add to your organization.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love hearing the way you've needed to just experiment, surround yourself with other people that could help you on this journey, be it that they did something very similar or were in your company but in a different position, and that transference of knowledge and ideas that can occur that can be really valuable, and that you had to reframe you know, that it wasn't something necessarily that you were looking at in a way that in the beginning was what the way you needed to look at it to succeed in the long run, and having that nimbleness of mind to reframe things.
And it's
so
something you sort of have, I have to continue to remind myself of, right? It's easy for me to talk to you about it here, but you know, you have those days where you feel lost. And so it's an iterative process, I think, and requires repetition and a lot of reflection.
Totally. And I think also whenever we step into new ideas and driving innovation is always in that category, right? Or take on new challenges, we will feel lost inevitably. It's almost like that expectation of, oh, I'm going to feel lost. So not reading into it so much,
right,
is what experience helps us do.
Yep.
I wonder if you would be able to share, you mentioned having some struggles and challenges. I think it really helps listeners to be able to hear specific stories of what a struggle or challenge was like for you, and having that opportunity to create your job, and what you did to overcome it.
Sure. I'm thinking of two, and I think one of the challenges that I face, and I'll speak more about a personal challenge because I don't want to put other matters out there, but I think one of the personal challenges, you know, it's called different things. It's called, I think, imposter syndrome is like the most commonly used term. In each stage of growth and in each initiative that you take on that's disruptive, and by the way, I do recognize that by its definition, an innovation role is meant to be disruptive, right? And that's not comfortable for me. For me personally, it's not comfortable. I love talking about disruptive ideas, but the act of trying to get that through others who may not think the same way has been personally challenging. And so I think they are sort of two different challenges, and I was trying to pick between the two, which is why I paused, but I think they're very connected. And so I think first was getting comfortable with being comfortable with having a seat in the room and knowing I was there for a reason and knowing the value that I could provide, even if it took someone else some time to see it. And so there's two parts of that. This is the value that I provide, right? And I deserve to be here. And here's the value of my ideas. Here's the value of my idea. And sometimes you have to pick and choose which one you advocate for. And I've had a hard time navigating that. I think one of the ways that I overcame it was I went through an exercise as actually through the Alt MBA program. I'm gonna plug that. And it's probably one of the most powerful exercises I took on. I had a specific scenario. We were taking on a different kind, we were rolling out a different kind of product and lots of different views on how that should be done. To me, this was an opportunity to not do things the way we had always done them. And I'm trying to navigate this project with those two challenges that were sort of ongoing behind the scenes. And so at the same time I was taking this class, and I think one of the prompts that we had to do was had to complete that week was about rationality. And so the conversation was everyone's rational in their own mind. And so I had to take on the world view of someone who I completely disagreed with and write down in the ways that I thought they were right. And So I ended up writing it as a conversation between this individual and their partner when they like, when, you get home after a day of work and like, that's where you feel you're your most honest self. Like you take off the work stuff. And so I think, I don't know that that helps me navigate the imposter syndrome or just feeling the self-confidence that you have to continue to work on. But that helps me understanding where others are coming from and what they have to do and what they're held accountable to and why they think the way they think has helped me change the way I converse with them about these new ideas. And so it helps give you a reason why, right? It may not be that, hey, no, this person's not taking me seriously or they don't respect my ideas. This is the world view that this person is coming to the table with, and this is mine. And so just like I have to understand theirs, I have to work to have them understand mine and come to a conclusion. So I don't want to say I've overcome that challenge because it's a challenge every single time, but I think I've found a tool to help navigate when those challenges occur.
I love your authenticity, and that's such a beautiful illustration and story of, that it doesn't go away completely. These feelings of imposter or doubt, that we get into new or different situations and they can come up again. And so we have to have those tools available. I think it's cool too, the way that you are, have learned to recognize, like, choose one thing to advocate for instead of try to advocate for it all. Like the idea, myself at the table, this value or whatever, there's so many different things that we can really choose to spearhead and to recognize, oh my gosh, I have to choose the one and to really focus on that. And that's a great exercise too. I think that those times where we can step into other people's perspectives and challenge ourselves in that way. That story makes me wonder, like, so what helps you get through to others, especially driving innovation, doing things different than the way they have been done in your company, that maybe marketing was done one way before, and now you're driving a different way of doing marketing that includes embracing branding. How do you manage the expectations of others and get them on board when they've been with the company for a long time and it wasn't done this way before?
I don't know that there's like a silver bullet answer. I think, every personality is different. I think, I love talking about what could be and the potential and the opportunities that exist. I think the most consistent thing that I do is bring it back to our client and the person that we serve and the mission of the company. And so if we want to do these things, if we want to continue to serve small, mid-sized business owners and help support them and fuel their growth so they can provide for our local economies. And we know that the world is evolving and the digital disruption is happening. Here's how this allows us to continue to do that. I think tying back to your mission, right? Whether it's the mission of your individual role or your company is something you always have to do. I think it helps us navigate gray areas and decision making.
That makes so much sense.
Yeah, I think that's what you can always fall back on. And sometimes it takes a little bit more, right? And it's an ongoing challenge. So I don't know, in a year I might have more for you.
Yeah, would love to check in and see. I mean, but it makes sense that what you're saying is connected with the why, not, and so when you can do that, then the what and the how might end up looking a little bit different, because at the end of the day, it's fulfilling the why. Yeah. And that's really important. You shared earlier the importance of self-reflection and kind of transitioning into these new previously undefined roles and taking on different responsibility. I was wondering what that practice looks like for you. How do you practice self-reflection?
So I know we spoke about this before this, and I don't have one straight answer. I think it's something, I think the most effective way for me to self-reflect is through conversation. And I know, and sometimes when I do that, I can be ineffective, right? Because it's easy to go from constructive to rant and back. But I think I am someone who really enjoys valuable conversations and having maybe someone else poke holes in what I'm seeing or what I'm thinking. But I also think taking some alone time is valuable. I live in Manhattan. I walk a lot, and I do think that I try to, in the mornings, I'll maybe listen to a podcast, and on my walk home, I try to use that space, like that in-between space, for just time to decompress and think through, there's usually something. And so I actually value that more now post-pandemic, because you didn't realize you were doing it before. And then when we were home and like working this way for long stretches of the day, I lost that. And so now that it's back, I do think that having those in-between spaces is important for all of us to get that reflection time.
Yeah. Not always packing things in and just busy.
Yeah.
It's almost like that notion of boredom is actually a good thing.
Yeah.
And lets our minds wander. That's really awesome. And I definitely relate to that, especially as an external processor. It can help to have those people to bounce ideas off of. And there are times too where it's, I've learned that there are people that it's better to not process with them. Like they're the ones that you go to after you process.
Right.
And then there are others that you can go to process. And that might be a difference in kind of personality or style or different things, but yeah, differentiating in those ways.
Yes. Sometimes you have to learn the hard way, but yes.
Yeah, it can be so helpful. I wonder, as you've made these transitions, like what has helped you shift? Like what shifts have you needed to make inside, like as in your mindset or how you're showing up, to shift from being, an administrative assistant to the, chief brand and innovation officer?
I think it's been a series of small shifts. And by the way, I don't know that like I'm here and I've arrived and I've made it. I think I still have to continue to shift. I think the first is sort of understanding my role and function in the organization and the commitment to like, what do I owe the organization, right? And sometimes it's hard to show up and advocate for that and what I owe my team. And I think understanding that helps me prioritize. What the prioritization, I think, is one of the shifts, and not from a day-to-day or what, how do I prioritize my to-do list, but what's important here, right? Am I advocating? Is it more important? Am I more upset, or is it going to be more effective that this person takes me seriously, or that they understand the end goal and what we're looking to accomplish? I think navigating, the different personalities, my boss has often used the word, it takes a level of maturity. I always took that as an insult early on, but I think I understand today what he meant by that, right? It's a different view on understanding here's the world we live in, here's what we've been given, right? And so how do we navigate and get to where we need to go given the tools that we have in our toolbox? And so I think it's a shift in thinking about what's important, how you get there. I still work on it. I think that's one shift. I think another shift is sometimes, I would be depleted when I felt like I hit a wall, and it would consume me, and I think now I try to, okay, we're stuck. This is where we are. What are we not seeing? There's a solution here. What do we have to do to see it? So I think that's another shift. And I think the third shift, and this is probably a generic answer, is finding balance, and creating like the time and space so that you can prioritize, you can self-reflect, because I think trying to go, go, or this culture of like over performance keeps you going. And I'm guilty of, when the adrenaline kicks, you want to keep going, but creating space to understand what's important and set the path to get there, I think is very hard to do. And I have to keep myself from falling back into the trap of being the doer, right? Because I can do all day, but I won't be as effective, or I won't add the same value as I would in really taking on some more strategic initiatives.
Yeah. Those three elements really resonate and make so much sense. And it feels like a really overall perspective shift.
Yeah.
Looking at things more holistically, more proactively, and maybe less kind of myopic vision, or just the day-to-day pieces, but being able to recognize that this moment in time is going to ripple out. And what are the effects of that ripple?
Yes. Yeah. And doing it on a day-to-day basis, right? It's easy to do when you're at a whiteboard and planning out the year, but it's also very easy to default. And I started in an admin role, and I was a doer for so long. In some scenarios, I still have to be the doer, and that's okay. But it's easy to default to that. Like that can be a default setting if I let it. And so just not letting that live on for too long.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I see you've been holding a pen in your hand. I'm wondering, what role does writing things down have for you? And
I'm a big writer. I do journal, sometimes it's a good disconnect. But if I have to write anything, I always start with a pen. I mean, I sort of doodled, like, if I didn't answer, if I think of something that I should have said, I'll write it down.
Sure.
But I guess we're part of the generation where we still like wrote in books with pens and pencils, and I learned cursive in school. So I think it's just habit, and I'm able to flesh out my ideas a little bit better when I write them down first.
Yeah, I so relate. I'm an avid journaler, so that is how I operate as well, and it's so powerful.
Yeah.
I wonder, as we're getting to our time now in closing, what is something you're looking forward to? I love that you shared the way you embrace a growth mindset. That you accept you haven't arrived, and so it makes me just curious, like, what is it that you're looking forward to in your role there?
It's a good question. I think that, I don't even think that I've scratched the surface, or that we've, I'm just a contributor along with everyone else in our company. And I don't think we've scratched the surface in what we can do. I believe in our company. I believe in what we do for small to mid-sized business owners. And I think technology, digitization only has the power to fuel that even further. So that's really what I'm excited for. I think, we've built a strong brand. We're looking to build more and further strengthen what we've started, and continue to grow what we've built.
Yeah, fantastic. It seems like you see an ocean of opportunity there, still to tap into. If any of our listeners, anyone in our audience wants to connect with you after this, what's the best way for them to do so?
I am probably one of LinkedIn's biggest fans, so I would say definitely add me on LinkedIn. You can just search the spelling of my name. I think there's probably only one of me on LinkedIn, so that makes it easy. Or you can follow me on Twitter, and I'm at Sia1014.
Awesome. Fantastic. And we can definitely include those in the notes as well so that people can easily link to them. Thank you so much again, Sia, for just sharing your story so authentically and openly. There's so many valuable tidbits and insight in here. And thanks to our audience for joining us today for Co-Creators in Conversation. I look forward to seeing you all next time. Take care.